It's also the message of focus on the journey, not on the goal,
Just totally, yeah, I know, totally.
which is also, again, a message that applies to many things in life. And also to not only to sport, but to academic training, to socializing, just focus on what's around you and enjoy the moment and
That's
trust,
actually life
yeah,
itself.
trust the process and you'll get to the good way.
Yeah, and trust the process, exactly.
But still, it's fascinating that the sport is innovating so much, that the rules are changing in 1, 2 years, that now we see that is going to, for the first time, be incorporated into the Olympics, which will certainly bring more attention, and with more attention, also more exploitation by the athletes, which will eventually lead to new rules or new adaptation to say, okay, this doesn't work.
New formats.
Yeah, let's.
In there, they will change it for sure. Sorry, they already changed some part of the format, and I mean, I think the sport climbing is quite a new sport, and we know that if you want to get to a very professional level, it needs to be profitable. So I think they're still learning on how to market and monetize the sport and the events themselves. And I predicted the rules, all the format, how the competitions happen. Maybe in 10 years, 15 years, we'll be looking back to the competitions nowadays and we'll be laughing because I think they will be dramatically different from what they are now.
For sure. There's no way that is going to remain the same.
No.
And
actually, I think it's quite bad and amateur format. So
a good example, I think, is chess, because chess is so old. Traditionally, it's the sport. I don't know if I should call it the sport or a game, but it exists for so long. And what is interesting for me is that chess, during its existence and during its evolution, has hit many roadblocks. So the people that are involved in the chess community, from time to time, they have to create new rules to make chess appealing. I think it even happened recently, like the pro matches, they're always ending in a draw because the people just knew the game. They knew how to try to win, and they knew that if they could not win, if they made a certain move or mistake,
the game for the other.
They just knew how to block the game. And it was so boring to watch because you knew it was either one makes a really big mistake or it draws. So it becomes quite predictable.
And you don't do big mistakes at that level. So.
Yeah, they are really, really pros. Yeah. And I was wondering if climbing, the same way that chess finds new rules from time to time to keep the game fresh, do you feel that climbing might need to invent itself and we see some mechanism like the mobile holds?
No, I don't see it on that way. I mean, I think what's happening on the sport, it's already spectacular, let's say. It's the format and the way the competitions are organized, the way they happen, the way they are even filmed. That is really an amateur way. Like if you watch the stream, it's too long. They're not capturing. I mean, you can tell that people that are filming, they don't really understand what's going on, so they don't know what to focus, and only one person climbing at a time. Lots of time that no action at all because the athlete is resting, in sinking. So they need to change the format in a way that anyone that doesn't climb can look at it and see a show, something like a thrill, like the same way that we watch hundreds of sports that we don't probably ever practice and we still like to watch them because they have this show component.
So when you mean about changes in format, it's more about changes in the organizational side of the event, but not into the actual climbing itself.
No, I mean, climbing itself, it's evolving because it changed dramatically in the last 15 years with the introduction of volumes, the new holds, very huge holds. Now we have these dual texture holds. But all of these, they tend to help the root setters enforce some kind of movement. So we want to make sure that this will be the way of climbing properly and getting to the top. With that said, I think there will be probably some evolution on that side, so it will keep going forward on that side of new holds, new challenges on that. But I think what is right now making climbing as hard to sell is that it's totally impossible to have it, for example, on TV. That the great struggle that there was when climbing was in the Olympics was that the Olympic board, they just wanted speed climbing.
Not the traditional.
They didn't want.
Due to the time it takes,
Yeah.
or speed climbing is 10 seconds. Like you start filming,
No,
it's
gone.
gone.
It's
Or
5.2 seconds now.
You start
for
filming,
the male record.
you forget to press the record, and it's gone.
First of all, it's the fastest sport in the Olympics right now, speed climbing. Also for them, that's really good because then you have timetables. You know, okay, at 10 there will be this, at 10:05 we have the speed climbing, at 10:20 I will be giving the medals for climbing, you know. So in the logistics side, it gets really predictable on what is going on and how and when, how long it takes, how long we need. And with the normal climbing, for example, the routes, they have an X amount of time. I'm not sure how long it is, but you don't know if the athlete is going to fall in the first hold and just be there for 5 seconds, or it's going to be there for 10 minutes, let's say. And this multiplied for X athletes, that gives you a range of time that then either you don't have anything to show or you don't have time enough to show everything.
Right.
You know, they need to change. They came up with a combination of disciplines. That was the solution. But for Paris, there will be a different already. It will be speed on one discipline, and then boulder and lead, it will be the combined discipline, the other. So like 2 medals for climbing on Paris, 1 medal for climbing on Tokyo. But there are formats like the Adidas Superstar and stuff like that that are way more appealing, especially I think for people that have no connection with the sport. I mean, if you watch just the finals right now of a boulder competition, world competition, we're talking normally roughly between 3 hours and a half to 4 hours. And if you just time the amount of time that they are climbing, it's probably under 1 hour for sure.
So there's a lot of filler time. Just idle, just filling.
Yeah, you know that he's putting shock, he's sinking, he falls, he asks for a brush. I mean, if you are really engaged in sport, you are used to it and you're not really paying attention to it anymore. But if you are not, then at some point it's just like, it's too much time, nothing going on. Then this athlete goes out, then another comes in, waits for the clock to start again. So it takes a lot of time, and they need to think of either putting some time element on it or having more people climbing same boulders at the same time with more cameras.
That does make sense from a TV direction perspective, because it's something you don't really think about normally. You're just a viewer. You just assume that the content will be there, but you're not doing the schedule, not doing the program. And having unpredictable timelines can really mess up how you plan for it.
I'll give you an example. With football, for instance, some finals, you have the 90 minutes, then you have 3 plus whatever extra time, and normally that's it. But when you have a final, then if they are tied, you need to add, well, it's 30 minutes playing plus the breaks, 40 more minutes for it. But then if they're still tied, then you have the penalties. And
The penalties can last forever.
and the penalties can last virtually forever. So
Yeah.
if you have, for instance, the news coming after and you want to do a live with some politician or whatever, then you're screwed because you cannot plan it. And we're just talking about one game and one sport. When you have the Olympics and you have so many stuff happening at the same time and you have the ceremonies for medals and you know that you're doing this sport at 10, you're doing this sport at 10:15, you're doing this. So you need to be able to predict a lot of what's going on. So there are a lot of pressure also on the organization for it. So I try to understand both sides. I think climbing totally has its place on the Olympics, but I think they will need to refurbish all the formats for a more appealing and more understandable and fastest format.
That makes sense and it seems likely because, as we've been saying, it's quite young and they are still experimenting. In terms of changes that I could think of, at least from the experience of watching the women competition, the World Cup, they had, I believe it was 3 or 4 boulders.
Yeah.
And then they went one at a time, one athlete at a time, one boulder at a time.
Yeah.
So the first boulder,
6 athletes. So
6 athletes, so
yeah.
each athlete in succession, they don't see each other. It's
Exactly.
just, so that's also intentional, I assume,
Yeah.
by design.
It's called on site. So you only see the problem when you're going to climb, and then you cannot see anybody climbing because that can give precious beta information. So
Although they do know some information from the crowd cheers. Like,
yeah, and they actually it's not totally on site because they have some visualization time. So they visit each problem. They can only touch the start holds, but I mean they get a picture of, and they are experienced enough to understand what's the challenge at least. But I mean on the Adidas model, for I don't think it's perfect, but it's just a different concept. You have 2 athletes doing the exactly same problem side by side at the same time.
So that means duplicating the
Yeah.
boulders.
Yeah.
Okay, that's what I wanted to get because it means additional effort by the route setters and the organization to double the space.
Well, not exactly, because they already have that space. Because they said 1 man, 1 woman, 1 man, 1 woman, and so on. So, for instance, if you do man one day or one moment and then woman other moment, you can just, with the same size, doing the same. But you cannot do it with the same walls, because right now the walls, they are not symmetric.
Right.
And you need symmetric walls for that, for example. So that's one thing that automatically needs to change. You need to have to create new walls just for that format. But like, I'm not saying that's the perfect format, it's just an idea. About the time, it's easier to manage. And having 2 athletes competing at the same time, even if one falls,
The other is on the wall and you can film it. But,
there's still some action for the viewer, you know?
right. But
And also you have this thrill of comparing 2 athletes at the same time. You know, it's for the point of the viewer, I think it's more interesting.
doesn't that undermine the fact that people or the organization does not want the athletes to look at each other and to learn from each other?
That's why they put time. So on the Adidas model, the fastest to get on the top wins.
Whoa, that's harsh. That's
Yeah.
another layer of
That's
competition.
another layer, yeah. I mean, for sure, wherever the format is, time will need to be a component, because that's what we're talking about, that needs to be managed and addressed.
But one thing is, okay, I have 4 minutes to get to the top. Other thing is, there is this person next to me that is also trying the same thing and can cut my 4 minutes. So it's not about 4 minutes.
No, it can be 20 seconds.
Yeah, it's not about the time that you have left. It's about the time that you already spent.
Hmm.
Well, that seems very harsh.
Yeah.
A lot of pressure to manage.
Well, like I said, it's going to be a different format, kind of a different sport, but with the format that we're seeing right now, I mean, we're trying to solve the problem of the federation right now, but you can have it on a square where they are climbing the same problems, so you have the same plans.
Like inclinations.
No, I mean for the viewers, like it's like they are climbing side by side, but they can be on the opposite sides,
Okay.
and then you don't need to put the time of who gets there first, and you can kind of have a bigger chance of always have somebody climbing and not just like staring at the wall and putting
Because
shot.
in this case, they will be back to back and not watching each other.
Yeah, for example.
But what if they just fall and they look behind and they see, oh, this guy is doing this better this way?
No, because they won't. Because I'm talking. You see a square.
Oh, a division in the middle.
Yeah.
A physical division in the middle.
So if one is climbing here and the other is climbing here, so the backs are there and the backs are there, so they don't never see each other.
So the walls are back to back.
Yeah.
Oh, that's quite interesting.
But for the viewer, when you put it on the TV, they are side by side.
That's very interesting.
So they don't. Of course, for the perspective, if you're doing is in an arena or something like, then you're only able to watch one of them.
Yeah.
You're always missing out on the other. But for then you can have like these big TVs to.
It doesn't feel to be a problem. Just you are watching one, and as you said, you have the big television showing the other one.
The other one on the other side.
Should be doable. I don't see
I
that
think,
to be
yeah.
a deal breaker.
I mean, I'm quite sure that they will be on board with people that are used to work on televisions, and they will come up with some format that works and it's better. But right now, it's too long to be commercially appealing to TVs, and why I'm saying that because I have the feeling that climbing needs to be able to enter the TVs to get to the next step of being a very popular sport, and I mean to evolve to other level, let's say.